All right, well, good to be with you and all of you online. So we have been studying the Lamrim Chenmo. So this is the stages of the path to enlightenment. These teachings have been passed down with a direct lineage, and the real precious piece of these teachings are that of all the Buddhist teachings, this offers a very organized, practical, here's the next step, here's literally everything to do from how to set up an altar to obtain enlightenment. It takes you through all three motivation scopes that we could participate in, and as we mentioned before, what it really allows us to do is whatever Buddhist teaching we're receiving, we know, well, it goes right here on this path. It fits into this category. And so one that I've personally have found very meaningful, and one that when my teacher, Venerable Geshe Sultan Gelsen, really was a foundational teaching to really give us a broad perspective on how things work, where we are on a path, why we do them. And it's also extremely practical in the sense that everything that we do requires some exploration, that we don't take anything on face value, that this is a path to explore. Venerable Robina Corton, she likes to call it a working hypothesis. Okay, well, here's a hypothesis. Well, try it out. Let's see if it holds up. Let's see how this test works. And so they've laid a foundation. We've already gone through the lineage of the teachings. We went through how to rely on a spiritual teacher, how to find one, what are those qualities, what are the qualities of students. We went through the preparatory practices to really make your practice conducive. And we've entered into what to actually meditate on. And the idea within a Lamrim is that you meditate with an inquisitiveness, an analytical idea, that we bring a teaching to mind and we bring it to mind and we analyze, we see, does this hold up? Does this make sense? What about this? You know, I don't think that works with this. And you challenge it. So there's the wisdom of hearing the teaching, the wisdom of then contemplating, thinking about it, and then at its highest level, then meditating on it. So having contemplated a teaching, bring it to mind, getting a sense of a realization, then you meditate with that and you let that set in. And so what happens is it goes from an intellectual idea to a realization, something that we carry with us. And as we meditate on each topic, it takes us through to the next. And so you'll see just the wisdom of all this as it just, they invite you to, before any topics even introduced, they say, well, what's the advantage of spending any time on this? And what's the disadvantage of not spending any time on this? And think about that. So our first topics, we got into three motivations. So these teachings can liberate us from suffering. And there's three, sometimes they're called scopes. So they have initial scope, medium scope, and the highest scope. Motivation, we can call it the initial motivation that grows to the middle and then to the highest motivation. And that initial one, just to refresh our memory, is I think all of us are here for a reason. Right? There's a reason you're sitting here Wednesday night. And on a very basic level, this initial motivation is really how to live a life without suffering, how to live a life that's happy, that's meaningful, and how to die happy. How's that? You know, that's a pretty good motivation for this lifetime. So this initial one is really how to participate in the life that we have without creating more suffering in our lives, with actually eliminating some suffering in our lives. And can I participate in this life in a way that is peaceful, that is in a sense of well-being, you know, not the giddy happiness. Your nervous system would probably give out if you were like that all the time. But this more tranquil, peaceful, meaningful sense of well-being. Can we do that with a lot less stress and worry in our life? And when we die, can we die in a sense that we feel okay about the life that we've lived? So that's our initial scope. And can we, within Buddhism, the working hypothesis that we'll throw out there is that our consciousness will continue. So this body will end, but our consciousness continues. And based on how we've lived our lives, we're going to start experiencing the world differently in a new body, in a new form. So in this initial scope, it factors that in. It factors in I want to make the life I have meaningful, and I want to be happy, and I don't want to suffer. I want to die happy. But it also factors in the idea that I really would like to set up for my next life to continue this path of the work I'm doing now. I don't want to have my next life be one that's around fear and pain, one that's around total grasping and unsatisfactoriness. I don't want to be in the animal realm. So these would be 3 lower realms that can be a next lifetime. So that if I live this life wisely, I can eliminate suffering now. And I can really set myself up so I didn't waste a life, and that my next experience could continue this flow. So that's initial scope. The second one, this middle, is the idea that, I just want to get off this whole cycle of rebirth. I want to know nirvana. I want to eliminate my karma that's dragging me around. I want to find liberation. I want to get off this wheel of just constantly being reborn into another form and really being driven habitually by habits and conditioning of my karma. And so that's a path, and very prominent path, especially within Theravada Buddhism, to just liberate ourselves so we don't have to keep doing this. And then the highest scope is one that says, well, how about full, complete Buddhahood, where not only are we enlightened, but our enlightenment itself serves for the liberation of all living beings. So, and that you'll find in the Mahayana Buddhist path, the Bodhisattva path, that whatever, as we noticed our motivation at the start here today, I invite you to really set a motivation that we can use our merit and wisdom to help all sentient beings, all living beings, to be free of suffering. And that's a good motivation. And Bodhisattva path imbues that type of motivation in everything that we do. And this, right now, we're at a point where we're just entering the initial scope. So our first topic is how to make good use of our precious human life. We have this incredible rebirth now. We've talked about that. There's 18 specific points. There's 8 freedoms and 10 endowments. But on a very just universal level, the life that we have right now, we have incredible opportunity to liberate ourselves from suffering. We have incredible opportunity to make this life meaningful that very few humans have. And certainly very few dogs or ants or insects or fish have. And then we factor in 7 billion humans, and we think about of all the lives that we've had over eons of lifetimes, we have this one right now. And right now, all the factors are present for enlightenment right now. But it's like a candle in the wind, this life that we have. Might be lit tomorrow, might not. So if we really want to take good advantage of it, we reviewed the advantages of this really precious opportunity that we have. We've already covered that. And then we covered some of the disadvantages, not taking advantage of this opportunity. We may never get it again. There's no automatic that we just go up. There's just no automatic. Right now, this opportune physical form is more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. In that sense, we have all the factors for enlightenment, and not that many out of 7 billion have it. You do. You do, by virtues of the opportunity to have Dharma, authentic teachings available to you. You have the ability to read and write. All the conditions are here. True lineage of teachings, more so than than in our recent history could even be imagined. I just, I open the computer and there's a quote by the Dalai Lama, There's a teaching, by my teacher. I can go into the website there and have years of his teachings on video and just watch it. It's amazing. You used to have to go find a lama, someone that has obtained these incredible states of realization, and to find one of them and to actually have a conversation or hear a teaching. And then could you understand it? Could it even be translated into English? Really rare. Really rare. We have it. You have it. And so if we really want to take good advantage of this, we reflect upon what a rare gift it is. And we call that to mind. So our invitation over the last couple of weeks was to really think about this incredible opportunity and to make good use. In this precious life, you have the opportunity for these more immediate goals to be met, as well as the ultimate goals. We covered those 2 points. Right now, we have the opportunities to eliminate a lot of suffering in our life, to purify a lot of karma, to cultivate merit and wisdom, to live a life that's meaningful and helpful and can continue a path. And we also have the opportunity to reach towards the ultimate goal of liberation. So we have that. So the idea was to reflect on that and how we can bring that into our daily life and how we can make good use of the moments of our life. Which brings us to our second topic, and everybody's favorite. Death. And, this is, as we go through these preliminary practices, the first one's precious, rare human rebirth. Again, it's not human rebirth. It's rare and precious. We have these freedoms and endowments. This opportunity they often call that's of leisure and opportunity. We have it, but we're not going to have it for long. And so it's nice to really reflect on how meaningful it is so we don't take it lightly. But the next step is we're going to die. That's just the way it is. This physical form will not continue. And if we don't factor that in, there's some problems. So as we enter this topic, they always start with what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of thinking about death. So are there some disadvantages? And of course, because we've got numbers, there's 6 disadvantages and 6 advantages. And the idea, again, with the Lamrim type teachings is that when you go through these sort of reflective pieces, you really reflect and you go point by point and you gain some really precise realization about that. And so I'll just read these 6, but I'll talk more generally about it. So number 1, if we don't think about our death, we won't remember or be mindful of the opportunity to practice Dharma. We're not going to think about Dharma. It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday. It's windy. What can I do today? And who can I call? And is there some... I'm thinking cheesecake right now. Is there some cheesecake available? I'm not sure where that came from. But, yeah, you know me and desserts. So they pop into mind. And that's, we just get into this cycle. And that is not the rare, precious human rebirth. Because in that cycle, we're not thinking about a meaningful life. We're just caught up in 8 worldly dharmas, which is actually, so I shouldn't get it. So number 1 is, if we don't really think about death, we're not going to really be mindful of Dharma. And by Dharma, I really want us to think about it in terms of anything that's going to eliminate suffering in your life, anything that leads you towards what we call genuine happiness, inner peace and well-being. That's Dharma. Dharma leads you to the truth of things. And another working hypothesis in Buddhism is that all mental afflictions, anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, anxiety, fear, nervousness, etc., is dependent upon misperception. It's dependent upon that. So if we actually see clearly, guess what we won't have? Anger, resentment, jealousy, all that stuff doesn't arise. Our natural state of mind is luminous, it's blissful, it feels good, it's non-conceptual. Love and compassion, you will find there that's not dependent upon a labeling. It's a natural state of being. It's already there. So working hypothesis. So you have to test it. You have to test it. And one of the ways to test this thing around Dharma is when I'm angry, when I'm nervous, when I'm envious, when I'm worried, see if there's anything that holds up that's true. So, for example, there's three ultimate truths. And this is just being in the world that we live in. There's 4 seals that we talk about with Buddhism, but these 3 truths. One is things are impermanent. How much of our life is suffering caused because I'm trying to make something permanent that's not permanent? Including my plan for the day. I had a plan for today and something changed. My partner changed. My relationship changed. My boss changed. My car's not the same car it was 5 years ago. Actually, I think I have a release bearing problem. But things change. Everything changes all the time. How much of our life are we trying to have things not change? And how much suffering arises from that, including just the change of my plan, or the change of my direction in life, or the change in my response to how I live. The biggest one is what we call dukkha, this unsatisfactoriness, that there's nothing outside of yourself that will provide a lasting happiness. It's just the nature of things. Everything outside of yourself can only provide you a temporary stimulus-driven pleasure. While it's there, stimulus, hot water, pleasure. Feels good temporarily. No water, no pleasure. And the seeds of all of our suffering are in the things that will make us happy, which is a pretty fascinating experience. Everything outside of yourself that you will think will cause happiness are actually all the things that we worry about, stress over, desire, and create angst and suffering in our life. There's nothing outside of yourself that's going to provide any ultimate lasting happiness. You just can't do it. And then the third mark of existence, these are called marks of existence, is there's no permanent, unchanging part of yourself. And yet we really have a strong idea of who I am. And I think that doesn't change much. How many times have we told somebody, he'll never change? Right? But we all change, and we change every moment. And our bodies are changing, but also our feelings are transient. That's one of the biggest ways we really create a lot of suffering in our lives, is we really identify with a feeling. I am really angry. I am really sad. I'm ecstatic. I'm devastated. I'm miserable. Notice the I am to all those? In truth, what's happening is I'm experiencing some sadness, and that will come and go. It's not me. I'm experiencing some anger. Guess what? That'll come and go. It's not me. I'm experiencing some fear. That will come and go. I'm experiencing some happiness and joy. Unfortunately, that comes and goes too. But they're transient experiences. And every day that I awaken, I have got new information, and I am certainly, if you look at one way of looking at this, is really, can you see yourself as a 10-year-old kid? We really think that was me, in a sense. Look how we've changed. Look how we've changed with our views on life from 5 years ago to today. Look at how things change in our relationships. Look how things can change in a moment about some person in your life that you used to love until you found out this one thing, and now I hate them. It's amazing how that can happen. Or I used to really not like that person, and then I found out about some of their struggles and their worries and their fears, and now I like that person. We have this sense of a self that's unchanging, that goes day to day, and that doesn't exist. And you'll find a lot of suffering comes around that. It's a limiting piece too. It's I'm not this kind of person, and I can't be like that, as well as our fears and insecurities and pride, and jealousies, and status, and praise and criticism, things like that. So Buddhism really says, you know what, if you understood that things are impermanent, the nature of things outside of yourself are ultimately unsatisfying, it will never provide you a lasting, and that you change, and so does everyone else. In changing, not in the sense of the impermanence, but that there's not a sense of self, John, that doesn't change, that is inherently existent in that sense. My body's changing, I'm changing, and my feelings are transient, my thoughts are transient. And if we understand that, you will see that you're not going to have a lot of things to have anger, resentment, and jealousy arise out of. Just kind of notice things change. Car didn't start today. I get a new plan. My problem is I think my car should start every day. Now I've got suffering. I think that if I exercise and eat healthy, I should live long. Cause of suffering. I think that my partner should always be, totally open, listening to me, and emotionally available at all times. Good luck. You see where our suffering comes from? We paint this really funny fantasy land around the idea that for some reason I shouldn't get leukemia, my car should start, my relationship should be healthy, and I should live X amount of years, and that my anti-aging cream should really work. And it just doesn't hold up, does it? It's a funny mind that we have. It just lives in a fascinating place, which doesn't have much to do with reality. But if you actually live in reality, you'll find a lot less of these afflictive emotions arising and feelings and thoughts. So that's the working hypothesis. So now if we're back to disadvantages of not thinking about death. Well, guess what another truth is, right? This body's not going to last. It's just not going to last. So one of the disadvantages, if I don't think about death, I'm not going to be mindful of the life I'm living. Even if I do remember what's important, like Dharma, I won't practice it or I'll procrastinate. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll go to that thing next time. I'll meditate later. Oh, that book John keeps talking about? Yeah, I'll order it, maybe. Or actually, I'll get it. Maybe I'll take the plastic off it one day, too. Might even read it. It could happen, but we can procrastinate. If I don't think about death, even if we do practice, we don't necessarily do it really purely. Our practice is mixed with the 8 worldly concerns, and that's where I kind of want to go with that. We can go through the motions. It's funny, if you think this is your last day, you tend to focus on that practice. And it's a real common trait. You may notice that the average age in here is a little older than, 20. There's something that happens as we get older. We start thinking about things in life. And, when you, with the monastery I lived at and different areas there, you'll see the Tibetans, you'll see a lot of older Tibetans circumambulating the stupas, doing their prayers. Thinking about death now. I'm doing my practice. If, I just think I got time, I'll meditate a little bit, I'll do some practice, but, I'm still thinking about the cheesecake later. And and my mind more quickly goes to that, and it gets caught up into fitting my practice into what we call these 8 worldly concerns. The 8 worldly concerns that we've talked about is those things that really keep us trapped karmically in this conditioned existence. And it's much more, so worldly concerns will emphasize with being much more focused on this temporary life than the continuum of life. Worldly concerns, gain and loss, getting what I like, trying to not lose it, seeking pleasure, trying to avoid pain, seeking praise, trying to avoid criticism, and wanting a good reputation, trying to avoid a bad one. Ultimately, these motivations impact every decision we make. When you wake up in the morning, you're thinking what's going to feel good, and I want to avoid pain. And if you're not, I think we should have a talk later. Okay? It's normal and that's healthy. gain and loss, that we're looking about what do we need and what do we want to avoid losing. You know, I mean, there's a reason we have auto insurance, or we lock the house. Praise and criticism, it just feels a whole lot better when somebody says something nice to you than when they criticize you. And we really, you know, as far as a good reputation or a bad reputation, it's nice to show up in a room where people would like to have you. Rather than think, there's John the idiot again. Oh my gosh. Did he bring any cheesecake? Maybe I can tolerate it. I don't know. But it's kind of funny because as we participate in life, we have, when we interact with people, from what I'm wearing today, how I got dressed, how I wear my hair, how I'm going to show up, I'm thinking about what others are going to think about me. I'm thinking about my own comfort too. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to be perceived. And these have influences. And we get much more wrapped up into that than what's most important. What's most important is making a good use of today. How am I showing up to people in my life, events in my life that are going to cultivate a path that removes suffering? How am I going to show up today that's meaningful, that's helpful, that's beneficial in a bigger picture? In other words, that is going to last, that I'll feel good about the next day, that's on a path of purifying karma, of cultivating wisdom, of seeing things accurately, of having a life that makes a difference even. And so while we have these 8 worldly concerns, well, our Dharma practice, if we're really thinking about making a good use of our life that's meaningful, this is going to be our primary concern. And regardless of gain or loss, pain or pleasure, good reputation, bad reputation, praise or criticism, we're going to do the right thing anyway, regardless of what you think about me. I'll be liberated to actually be authentic and real and human and do what is healthy regardless, and not worry about those things as much, but factor them in. If I really want to make good use of my life, I'm going to need, some shelter, some healthy food, and I'm going to need to have an education. I'm going to need these things. Our problem is we often get so caught up in this, we forget about our practice. We forget about the teachings. We forget about what's meaningful. And even if I do remember the Dharma, I'll fit it in between my worldly life. When in fact, all of your life can be your practice, if we remember. So another disadvantage is, it says we won't practice earnestly at all times. We'll lack intensity. Again, it seems like a subtle difference. But here's the 2 that I think that really jump up for me in particularly is if I'm not really thinking about my death, I'm going to do some things that are going to really cultivate suffering in my life. I'm going to create unwholesome karma. I'm going to do a lot of things in my life that just add karma to my life and negative actions. Anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, idle gossip, talking about other people, putting people down, getting caught up in me first, you second, and getting caught up in this worldly life in a way that's just going to not propel me into at least another rebirth that's meaningful. I'm just going to go with the ride. And in the end, the 6th one is we will die with regret. If we don't think about death, guess what we die with? What I should have done. What did I waste? So when we think about it, this idea of death, if we actually think about it, we can die happy, knowing that my life was meaningful, knowing that I didn't waste today. I like to go back to the Native Americans all the time, and they have that great saying, today's a good day to die. And I think that's a great motivation to live each day. Make each day a good day to die, that I am using this day meaningfully. The 6 benefits, I'll just whip through those real quick here, is that we'll act more meaningfully, right? We'll want to practice Dharma. All of our positive actions will be more powerful and effective because And that's something to be aware of. There's this idea of karma, that anything we think, say, or do, any movement of mind, karma is a movement of mind. So it's like a tape recorder's always going. Whatever I think, say, or do is planting seeds. And those seeds grow, and they will ripen. There's no way around that. Now, if I bring my intention into it, now that's the weight of my karma, is what's my motivation. Now, if I am practicing Dharma, if I'm really motivated to participate in my daily activities to make the most meaning out of life, to see the truth of things, to interact in a way that cultivates virtue and wisdom, then with that intention, the karma is much stronger, as opposed to just doing something good just idly. But that now the weight of, how about I'm doing this for all living beings? Well, that's a much heavier intention than, you know what, I'm jumping in the jacuzzi because it feels good. The same thing of jumping in the jacuzzi could also be a very virtuous thing. I'm tired and sore, and if I want to have this body be healthy and well to truly be a benefit to others, I need to take a break and get in this jacuzzi and do so that I can nurture this body, so I can actually have something in reserve to be of benefit to others, to be more useful. How about that for a motive for a jacuzzi? I just turned a jacuzzi into a spiritual experience. Right? Everything in our life can have that, if we're really focused on what's true and what's meaningful. But so much of it, we don't think about those things. So our positive actions are going to have a stronger power. They'll be more effective. And these are fun, interesting. It's important at the beginning, it's important in the middle, and it's important at the end. In other words, if I think about my death, it's going to really help me enter a path to make this life meaningful. It's at the beginning. It's really a source that makes me think about what's important. And isn't it true when someone passes, when somebody dies, or that we call to mind, well, what's this all about? It's the entry of a path. It brings it to mind. So at the beginning, very important. It puts us on a path. In the middle of our path, I'm already on a path. Well, it's going to provide me the perseverance to remember what's important. And at the end, it's really going to make for that transition. That's going to be really allowing us to have that, to let go of a body without clinging and attachment, to let go of it as a natural thing in a healthy, happy way that actually can inspire and help your loved ones in their life as well. And at the end, the sixth one is, you'll die with a happy mind. And you can see where the advantage then is, if I think about my death, you know, nobody wants to, right? There's one of my favorite quotes is, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to go today. And it's an interesting thing. It kind of fits with this, that if I live this life making it good use for my next life, if my next life is more important than this life, I will use this life wisely. And that barrier in between won't matter so much. And it won't matter if today's my day or not. So one of my thoughts once, I don't know that it holds up anymore. It's a Buddhist teaching that says, if you really want to enter a path of no more suffering, make your next life more important than this life. Then you'll want to make sure that how we live our life, that when we die, it won't be with regret. I didn't waste this. I've set this up for the next transition. Because it asks us what's meaningful. But you can find that in all traditions, right? If I'm Christian and I want to go to heaven, well, that's what's important, is how I live my life to get there. If I'm atheist or agnostic and I just don't know, it's kind of a funny phenomenon that if I make my life meaningful and I live thinking of others, and if I live in alignment with my own values and ethics, guess what I just did? I had a meaningful life that when death comes, I can let go more easily because I didn't waste it. So what I really find valuable about especially these preliminary practices, whether you're an atheist, whether you're a Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, whatever, human, or you just don't know, the same principles are going to help to make a meaningful life for you. Which is, instead of worrying about 8 worldly concerns, how about worrying about what's a meaningful life? What's important? What will I feel good about a week from now instead of in this moment? Delayed gratification. Those of us who are parents, we know what that's about. What's the healthy thing to do now? But if we're not thinking about death, we're not thinking about what the healthiest thing to do with my life is. We're thinking about what's going to feel good for an hour, or what's next, or what am I worried about, and we really get entrenched in these 8 worldly concerns. So the piece here is to, first off, well, are there some disadvantages to not thinking about death? Are there some advantages? And so we just go through and think that, well, I think there's some advantages. If I actually call to mind the truth of this existence I live in, which is temporary, I can make this day meaningful if I can actually understand that I don't know that I'll have tomorrow. There's some power in this. It can make this life meaningful. So they don't bring up death for any other reason than to make the best use of the life that you have. And so after going through the idea that, okay, I've thought about this. If I ignore death, guess what's going to happen? I might die with a lot of regret, and I may have wasted a lot of my life. And how much of our life do we generally just waste? And they said mindful here. How much of our life in a day has come and gone, and we don't even remember what we did? How many really amazing triumphs that we have that just have come and gone that felt good temporarily? And how many things in our life were just so frustrated and resentful? I bet you nobody in this room can remember all your resentments or all your stresses or all of your worries that have come and gone. They just come and go, and we're caught up in a moment, and then we're in a new moment. It's like just a feather being blown around out there. I'm really happy about this, really sad about this. And this happens, and I get this award. And that's where I quote Dan Gilbert a lot. He's a Harvard researcher. And he really talks about our... He calls it an impact bias. An impact bias that our brain, we simulate what would happen, which normally works pretty good, right? But when it comes to happiness and suffering, it doesn't work at all very well. It says that if I get this college degree, I'm going to be really happy and my life will be great. It says that if I, lose my partner, I can't go on. It says I'll be really devastated if this happens. I'll be really happy if this happens. And what the research has shown is that almost any of those things, as big as divorce, marriage, an award, college degree, if most of those things happened more than 3 months ago, it has almost no impact on your level of happiness and well-being today. Pretty amazing. But if you step back from a minute, it actually makes sense. You've noticed in your life, you got an award, you won something, you felt pretty good. But a month later, you're about the same level of person as you were after that, right? You just come back. And you've had really difficult things happen in your life that were really devastating and hard. And then, a few months later, we get back. He calls it kind of a set point, kind of our level of well-being that we have. But our brains don't tell us that. Our brains tell us, I'll really have it made. If I work for this and I get this, I'm going to be really happy for a long time. And it just doesn't hold up. You know what does hold up? Is the effort that you put in. Did I do this ethically and meaningfully? That'll hold up, whether or not the outcome goes your way. The outcomes don't matter. What matters is, how did you show up in college? How did you show up in your relationship? How did I treat others along the way? That will stick with you. But the outcomes don't. And then the worst part is, especially if we've had a lot of achievement in our life, boy, we'll talk about a ring around your neck. I used to be that person that spoke to thousands of people. I used to be. And then we have to remind people, well, I'm this person. When you're really not. That person has come and gone and has left the building, and now you're this person. And I lived and raised in Southern California around a lot of the media and, movie stars and TV stars. And, I just see it a lot. A real good example is, former actors or former child actors, people that had their time. And then, the whole rest of their life goes on, and they used to be this person. And we do that a lot with our achievements. We hang them on walls to remind us that I used to be somebody. Which negates that I am somebody right now. I am a valuable human being right now, in this moment, by showing up right now. We forget that. So, when we really think about taking advantage of this life and this opportunity, I really want to bring in truth. Truth is this life's not going to last. And so there's at this point we would enter into what's called a 9-point meditation on death. 9 points. It's really 3 points with 3 subpoints. And what I'll tell you now, because not everybody takes really solid notes, is if you're interested in the 9-point meditation, I'll email it to you. Or Tubed in Children, I think if you just typed in 9-point meditation, Venerable Tubed in Children and None of Our Tradition has a really great outlet. I mean, you can just download it, or I'll email it to you. But the 3 main points are things that I talk about a lot, and in the 9 points. So there's 3 points. First thing is death is certain. So you take some time and just think, death is certain. There's this physical body's not going to last. And the subpoints I'll just read through because I do actually have time. So death is inevitable. That's the main point. There's nothing you can do to prevent this physical form from dying. Our lifespan cannot be extended when it's your time to die. And with each passing moment, we're closer to our death. And we will die even if we have not had time to practice Dharma. But wait a minute, I was going to do that retreat next week. That's not going to factor in. What's going to factor in is when this physical body gives up, it gives up. And nobody lives forever. So death is certain. And so the idea is that if we go into this meditation and we really start with the fact of death is certain, and you look around, for me when I do it, I just call to mind everyone who's passed away. Just this week, my sister-in-law passed away. It was her time. And, everyone knows the story of my brother-in-law who passed away just taking a walk in the park with my sister. Died right there, heart attack. People die suddenly. People die after a long life. People die after a short life. People die slowly. But they all have died. So I call that to mind to remind myself and to look at that. And then you're supposed to get a realization under each subpoint. So the first realization is that you really want to practice Dharma now. Right? Because you're going to die whether or not you do. Let's make good use of it. The second one is time of death is uncertain. This is kind of that thing, right? I think I'll live X amount of time. I got about 20 years left. It's always the real interesting question when you do your retirement plans, right? You kind of have to figure, what if I live this long? Because people are living longer than they used to in general. But we actually don't know. In truth, there's nothing to say that we'll be here tomorrow. Nothing. And that's where really reflecting on the uncertainty of death, seeing people that passed away suddenly, people that died of unusual deaths, people that... I used to really accumulate unusual deaths. I know it sounds morbid, but it's helpful for me because, when I think about somebody sitting in their living room and a plane coming through, when they're just watching TV in the living room, we feel pretty safe in the living room. The guy in Florida who was in his bed and the sinkhole came up and just sucked him away? Yeah. I mean, his brother couldn't get to him in time. You're in your bed. No one breaks in your house and you're not here. There's a guy walking on a beach, and it was in Texas, and a plane came down and actually hit him. He's just like jogging, Weird stuff happens, weird stuff. There's a story I used to tell, but it turns out I don't think it's true. It's one of those Snopes things, Yeah, so I won't even tell that one. But it was really weird. Yeah. Well, it's just okay. So, Snopes, just irregardless here. These go out on YouTube, so yeah, I'm just saying. It's a story. The story was that there is a fire in the forest, and down at the lake, they'd have these helicopters come, and they would drag up a bunch of water, and they'd go and dump it on the fire. And they said that this guy was snorkeling under the water, got picked up, and then dumped on a fire. And I actually met people that told me that was true and that they lived near that lake. But when I look at it, that Snopes, types, it's like an urban legend thing. But unusual things do happen, and I pay attention to them, and you can see that. I mean, there's the real tragedy we just had of the airplane, and the pilot committed suicide and took everybody with them. Those things happen, but we don't bring it up with the sense of fear. We bring it up with just the truth that stuff happens, and I don't know that I'll be here tomorrow. I could work out, I could exercise. I've been with a guy having a heart attack in the gym, and those things happen, and just so that we know it, that we're not immune to it. And so, time and death is uncertain. In general, there's no uncertainty of lifespan. There are more chances of dying and less of remaining alive. And that's one of those things when it's talking about the fragility of our body, that there's so many ways that we could not be here. So the conclusion you would get from that is that you're going to practice Dharma right now, continually, and not waste it. And then the last one is, and I often will rephrase it a little differently, but we'll go with the straight up, which is, nothing can help you at the time of death except Dharma. You're not taking anything with you except how you lived your life, right? Trying to think, there's a St. Francis quote. I won't nail it, but St. Francis was, when you die, the only thing you can take with you is what you've given, And so karmically, what sticks with us is how we lived our life. And the only thing that can really help is Dharma. And again, Dharma is truth. Dharma is the practice that you've accumulated of cultivating merit and wisdom, the imprints and realizations on this path towards no more suffering. That is what's going to help. Clinging to truth, not clinging to worldly attachments. And so, wealth is of no help, friends of family are no help, and your body is not going to be of any help. Doesn't matter how much you worked out, how many laps you just swam, it doesn't matter. Friends can't help you, and no matter how much the wealthiest people in the world die. That's just the nature of it. The only thing that will help you in that transition is your level of consciousness, what you've realized in your life that can take you through that transition. There are practices that help you cultivate that continuity of consciousness from a physical death to another, what we call a reincarnation, rebirth. And so within traditions, people will practice that. They'll actually go through the same death process, where the elements will dissolve. I mean, it'll highlight exactly what happens at each level, and that you get used to this dying process so that your consciousness will recognize what we call the clear light and be able to stick with that and take that into your next. And so the analogy is when we go to sleep every night. When we go to sleep every night, we go very unconscious, and then all kinds of things happen, and then we wake up again. And we don't necessarily remember the dreams. Sometimes we do. But you can learn how to lucidly dream. You can be conscious in your dreams. So it's a similar type of process, that you can become conscious as your body goes to sleep and actually be conscious all through your dream state, and then conscious when you wake up. So, there's practices for this. But in our piece here is that if I know that death is certain, time and death uncertain, usually the way I phrase the last one is, what will matter to you at the time of death? What will matter? What goes with you? What's the real essence of this day today? And the real essence of this day today is what you've done that you feel good about. That's meaningful. That's helpful. That goes on. And even if you don't believe in reincarnation, even if you don't believe in that consciousness, at the time of death, if you're an atheist, what's going to matter is the same thing, how you lived your life. Did I live my life in a way that was meaningful, that I felt good about? Do I have regrets? So the beauty of this calling death to mind and taking some time with it is it really gives us the resolve to not waste this day. Because this day will never come again. And if you take the time to bring this to mind every day, you can actually get that realization. I mean, right now we can get it because we're talking about it. But what about 10 o'clock tonight? Or what about when you're shopping? Or what about when you're late to your next appointment? Caught up in the hustle and bustle of life. Do we remember this? Or do we really honestly think, well, hey, I got plans for it. Actually, I'm starting to have plans for a cheesecake. But that this thing's going to happen. And, but if we really were able to take some time with this deeper realization that says, today can be my last day. What really matters? And you know what happens when I'm there and that happens in my life? All of my little worries and concerns become very insignificant. They just melt away. And what becomes really relevant is how I am in this moment. There's a lot of benefit to calling this to mind, so that we don't waste this life, so we can live it meaningfully. And when you do a meditation on death, just to throw some more fun in the game, they think about two outcomes. Your physical body could die, and you could either transition to a life that continues the path as a higher rebirth, or I could have a life that has a pretty harmful, rebirth around fear and pain, grasping and unsatisfactoriness in the animal realm, these three lower realms. That could happen. Which calls to mind what really matters. What really matters, if I'm thinking about next life than this life, I'm going to make this life meaningful in a way that sets me up for a really meaningful passing, and a mind that's free and clear at the time of death. At the time of death, they say that your heaviest imprint for the next rebirth is your state of mind right at the time of death. And so it's really been taught that at the time of death you want to be joyful, you want to be peaceful, and you want to be unattached so that you can really flow into the next one. And You don't want to be grasping and clinging, and because those habits and conditioning just, the weight of that imprint just carries right into the next thing. So what we're thinking about. So typically within a Buddhist, if someone's passing away within a Buddhist tradition, you're not gonna see a bunch of wallowing or crying. You're really gonna see some love and kindness. You're gonna see a really sense of warmth, of caring, and of letting go and helping for a peaceful transition. That we're not, because when we really think about our grieving process, we're really grieving about our loss, right? And so to really put that on hold and say, I'm really here for this person to pass in a way that's peaceful, that provides the ultimate potential for a transition. And so with my mom's passing, it was a really beautiful thing. All of my family, I was a monk then, and we really made a lot of effort, and we let her go. We let her know that that her work was done, that her kids are okay, because that's what moms worry about, right? And so we got to tell her, it's okay, we're okay, Mom, and we all were okay. And I come from a family of knuckleheads, so she did some really good work. And, and we said the rosary, because that was her belief system. And so we sat there and, as a Buddhist monk, doing the rosary with her and letting her transition, letting that mind go, let her know that they're okay. That's what's important. So this next week, the last couple of weeks has been time to really reflect on this really wonderful opportunity that you have. And now this next week is to take some time each day to really reflect upon three things, basically. Is death is certain, time of death uncertain. And what's going to really matter at the time of death for you? Here it's written, the only thing that can help you is Dharma, basically your state of mind, your level of realization in this lifetime. And even so, how you've lived your life, that's what lives on. And see if you can make each day that you wake up a good day to die. And if it was going today, I'm okay with that. I'm not wasting today. And you can see how, just bringing that in your mind, how many little frivolous things we get caught up on that just aren't going to matter. Kind of wrap up with my favorite Emerson quote. And he says, for every minute of anger you have, you will lose 60 seconds of happiness. For every minute of anger you have. It's been scientifically proven time and time again. This can stand up to any research. And so the idea is, if this is, this day's not coming again, how much time do I have to get caught up into jealousy and resentment today? I don't have that kind of time. So I invite you this week to, take some, again, not in a morbid way, in a way that's liberating. You'd be amazed at how liberating it is if I just free myself from all these angst and worries and concerns about outer stuff that doesn't really matter and focus on what does, which is being healthy and attend to what needs to be attended to. But what's really going to matter is how you show up for those things, how you are with the people in your life. And it doesn't have to be huge efforts. But if we're not calling this to mind, our mind forgets. And we forget that that person we care about, we forgot to let them know we love them today. And I may have said some harsh words instead of the ones, I love you. Those are the things that we regret. Today, for example, today's the anniversary. My daughter is married 9 years. And she married a wonderful young man. And they got married young. She was like 24. And she called me up. I remember she's young. She was getting her master's. She's going to get married, I'm like, really? What are you thinking? But she actually had thought it through and had a list of the qualities of why it would be good to marry him, and what would be important to that. And she thought it all through, made a convincing case, and honored that. And they've been married 9 years. They've got 2 kids in life. And I got to call him today, my son-in-law. I got to tell him, that I really admire the husband he is, the parent he is, and the way he has shown up in my life and been a part of my family. At a young age, they have gone through normal ups and downs, and he's a stay-at-home dad who's a photographer and plays with the girls and sings to them, and a great guy who shows up through challenging times, and much better than I did at those age. And it was just really nice to call him and personally tell him that I admire him, And you'll find that if you think about this thing we call death more frequently, you'll be making more of those calls. You remember that the person in your life today, to let them know that they're valuable, instead of getting worked up over whether they put the dishes in the dishwasher. So after you remind them to put the dishes in the dishwasher, let them know you love them, right? Or as a role model, just put them in there, showing them how much you love them, even though they didn't put them in. This idea of calling to mind the impermanence of our life is to know that we'll be prepared for it when it comes, and that will actually make the life that we have more meaningful today. And so that's why I bring that up. Okay. And anyone, if you would like, I can, you can just Google 9-point meditation on death, and Tubed in Children has one you can download, or if you go Way of Compassion, I'll email it to you. Real nice process. All right. We ran a couple minutes over. I'm sorry, I got a little caught up in the anniversary. 9 years I've been married. Her first marriage, hopefully her only marriage, outlasted mine. So yeah. Anyway, I've got another chance. So there's something else I was going to say before we wrap up with our dedication. I'm just going to pause for a moment. And I remember. So Laura had mentioned a mindfulness course on the weekend, which is through MLP. I always like to remind people that those are always offered with scholarships. So it's anyone can afford it and does want to attend. Money's never a problem with that. That's what I wanted to share with you. Okay. And those of you online, thanks so much for joining us today. And these teachings, they do get edited and put up on our website. So if you want to review anything, or if you miss something, you can't make it on a Wednesday, we post them up there. Okay. All right, so let's do a little dedication, dedicating the virtue and wisdom we've accumulated here today for the benefit of all beings. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom we have accumulated here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. Dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness, and may we use the virtue and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to cultivate virtue and wisdom that leads to enlightenment, so that we can truly benefit all living beings. All right, thank you all so much. Always an honor to be here with you at the Dharma. And again, if anyone's interested in being a part of the committee for the monks, see Shannon, and day-long retreat. Flyers are in the back. Oh, email list. If you want to be on our local email list, please sign up. We have a general, but sometimes we have like a special event or something just for the Carbondale people, make sure you sign up on that. And those of you online, make sure you can go to our website so that we get announcements out to you. All right, be well, stay out of trouble, and have some fun. Okay.